Hello, this is Nick Augustine with attorney Joseph Wrobel in Chicago, and he is the Chicago Bankruptcy attorney here for our latest Chicago Bankruptcy Update podcast, where we take real questions from real people and Joe gives his best lawyer answer. Today, we're going to talk about things in the world of Chapter 7, Chapter 13, where to file bankruptcy, pending changes in income, what happens with that, discharging debts, people not served by court papers, all sorts of interesting things. These are the common situations that happen to people, and we're here with Joe Wrobel. Joe, how are you doing today?
I'm doing fine, ready to go, ready to give you those answers.
All right, we're going to empower people to decide if bankruptcy makes sense for them, and we're not here to gatekeep the information. This is the age of information sharing. So let's jump right into it. Our first question is about Chapter 7 bankruptcy. The person wants to know, should I file for Chapter 7 bankruptcy if I have $65,000 in credit card debt? I owe approximately 65K on 5 different credit cards with no current job, living close to parents, but not having any real assets. However, that said, my father is a car collector and he owns 8 cars and 3 motorcycles. The estimated value of all the vehicles is around $165,000. And my name is on the title of all of these vehicles. So, can we keep the cars? Are we at risk of losing some of the vehicles? What happens if I file for bankruptcy?
So if I had a room full of prospective clients, let's say there's 20 sitting there, and half of them did a little bit of reading about bankruptcy online, my website or wherever, I will bet you half of them, the ones that did the reading, would raise their hand and know the answer to the question. The answer is that Chapter 7 would not make sense because he is an owner with his father on some very, very valuable vehicles, and the law would not allow him to keep them. Every state, even though bankruptcy is a federal law, every state has its own uh, determination as to what you can keep. How much can your vehicle be worth? How much can your house be worth? Can you keep more than one car? But regardless of where this individual lives, they're going to lose all or almost all of these vehicles. So the option is either don't do a bankruptcy, deal with the creditors on your own, work out your own payment plan, or file Chapter 13. He will have to set up a payment plan to pay all the debt back in full because his assets exceed the total amount of the debt. He would be able to do a 5-year plan. If you take very simply 65,000 and divide it by 60 months, you're looking at over $1,000 a month. So Chapter 13 for this individual requires him to be making enough money to cover his living expenses and the a sufficient amount of money to cover the Chapter 13 plan.
Okay. Our next question is about someone with credit card debt. They're being sued by Synchrony Bank for credit cards. They said they had to stop paying when they became disabled. They have no income. They are on SNAP benefits as well as Medicaid for medically indigent with high cost medical needs. The only income is a child's survivor benefits from losing a spouse, and the person is currently waiting on SSDI, a hearing for that. They say that I have one home. I have a home and a car. Synchrony Bank declined a payment arrangement that I could afford. So, what are the chances the lawsuit would be dismissed for being uncollectible or not being collectible?
Now, that's not going to happen. Uh, at some point, there will be a judgment entered against her. A judgment is a finding by the court that the claim of synchrony is correct, and that judgment then allows synchrony to collect against the debtor or assets any way that's legal. Now, not being employed, there's no wages to garnish. So she doesn't have anything to lose in that regard. And the income coming in would all be exempt. So the money in bank accounts wouldn't be able to be garnished. However, Synchrony could take their judgment and place it as a lien recorded against the property. And it would sit there and gather interest. And one day, when this property is sold, that judgment would need to be paid along with the accumulated interest. So chapter 7, to eliminate debts, well, let's put it this way. I can't answer whether she can do chapter 7. She owns a home. I don't know its value. I don't know the mortgage balance. I don't know the state that she lives in. So those factors, what it's worth, the equity in that property, and where she resides would determine whether she could file Chapter 7 and keep the home. If that won't work, Chapter 13 is not going to be an option. She doesn't have the income. I wouldn't do it. And I would just, there's not, there, don't hire an attorney. Don't spend money on representing yourself in court. You can't really beat such a claim. The judgment sitting there against your property is really not a big deal.
Yeah, there we go. And then when there's something that's new, that can be dealt with then. Our next question is about someone with a charged off debt from 2022. And they're wondering if they can now still be sued in civil court for that. Question further states, I replied to the debt collector asking for a payment plan, and I was bounced around to various lawyers. Can I be sued after all these years? Should I try to resolve it with the plaintiff? The debt is $4,800. We don't have that money, and I'm 77 years old.
Okay, so if this is a debt going back to 2022, that's not that old. In most states, it would be within the statute of limitations. Um, Certain debts, if the creditor doesn't try to collect, depending on the state, they become too old beyond the statute of limitations and they can't proceed. This particular debtor has a claim of against him for $4,800. A bankruptcy could be filed. I can't say that I would recommend it unless there is other debt that we don't know. The lawyer's fees for a bankruptcy, regardless of where this individual lives, in relation to a $4,800 debt, is probably not going to be worthwhile doing. So if there's not enough other debt for a Chapter 7 to make sense, then I would work out a payment plan with the creditor. However, as this person is 77, they may be uncollectible, they may be judgment proof. It may not be necessary to do anything at all. The best advice would be to contact an experienced bankruptcy attorney in the county where they live and get a little bit of advice to get answers to those questions that I have posed. And I've posed them because, again, I don't have complete information.
Mm-hmm. Okay, moving on to our next issue. The next question is whether they are someone who could do Chapter 7 or Chapter 13. They are in Nebraska and currently outside of the USA. Says, I previously lived in Nebraska. I have some unsecured debt from personal loans and credit cards. Then I left the United States in September 23, concerned about future judgments if I do return to the US, however. So I'd like to explore filing for Chapter 7 bankruptcy to resolve my debts properly, but I need to understand whether I qualify and whether the case can be handled remotely.
Well, the last part of the question is easy. Uh, since COVID, Most areas, the trustee meetings, any court is done online, usually through Zoom, so it can be done remotely. As to being no longer being a resident of the United States, the only way they would be able to file a bankruptcy would be if property was owned in one of the states of the United States, or if there was a business being operated. Otherwise, check the bankruptcy laws of whatever country they're in. They probably won't like the bankruptcy laws. We have the most lenient bankruptcy laws in the world. And if that's not going to be an option, if they do come back to the US, at that time, they can look into bankruptcy, being able to file once they're here long enough. Would be once they're here 6 months and reestablish residency, they could file if it's necessary. The creditor could have gone away.
Hmm. Right. Well, and if the creditor believes that they are also outside of the U.S., they might believe the person is not someone they can easily collect from, and they might have moved on. Who knows? We'll see. So, all right, my next question is someone who has a pending Chapter 7 they've filed, but their income has changed. Said after filing the Chapter 7 bankruptcy, but before the 341 noticed creditors meeting, I learned that my income changed. I'm going to be receiving short-term disability benefits from a new medical condition. That income will cause a surplus of more than $800 per month. Will this new benefit force a conversion to a Chapter 13, even if the funds are exempt?
Normal, if this was employment, that could very well be a problem if it's going to be more or less a permanent job. But if it's simply short-term disability, um, being that it's short-term, meaning it's only going to last for a short period of time, it won't be a factor to force a conversion to a 13. In this case, we'll be able to go through as a Chapter 7. So that's an issue. Um, Chapter 7 bankruptcies, normally you can be working and obviously have living expenses. Your petition's going to have a budget, but that budget can't show more than a couple $100 left over. So someone who's looking to do a Chapter 7 and they qualify in all respects, but they have a differential between their income and expenses of 750, 800, 1,000 a month, even though they pass the income test that's required for Chapter 7, they're going to have to do a Chapter 13 because of that leftover money they have each month. Many clients, when I tell them that, they say, well, I don't have any money left over. And I explain, well, you're paying your creditors now. So subtract those monthly payments. And would not you be able to save money every month, put it in the bank? Then they realize.
That's a that's a great thing to have a little bit of extra cash in your pocket, especially for walking around because things, are always more expensive. And so that's a good thing. And this is about the point where I want to remind people that many of your questions are answered all over the website, chicagobankruptcy.com. The website recently was reformatted and reskinned so it's easy to use on mobile devices and your laptop as well, or computer, or whatever you're doing. You can go through some of our different podcasts. We've been doing these Q&As for well over 10 years and have had all sorts of exciting questions. You can just find the search bar in the area on the website and actually ask your question and search the website for things. Also wanted to let you know that Joseph Wrobel Limited has locations all over Chicagoland, and he can meet via Zoom and make things very easy for you. And you learn everything that you need to do. You're not going to get lost in the details, and you're going to find out if bankruptcy makes sense for you to get a fresh financial start where you should be and move forward in the future. And I predict that we are going to see better economic news every day we go forward. There's a lot of people who are finding all sorts of new jobs and income opportunities. And sometimes all you need, it's just like sports. When you turn that trajectory around and you start having forward progress, you start feeling better about yourself, making better decisions, and making more money. Right, Joe?
That's absolutely correct.
Anything to add?
Well, what's very strange, and this is very counterintuitive, um, bankruptcy filings increase the more people are working, which you would first you would say to yourself, doesn't make any sense. But what happens is when you're working, it becomes much easier to spend money, right? Your neighbor has something, you're influenced by the advertising, which is their job. All the advertisers for products, they want you to spend money. New cars are enticing. So, new jobs, people going back to work, making more money. It's great for everyone, but strangely, it does increase bankruptcy. I'll give you another instance. During COVID, people weren't working, right? You were home in your parents' basement, and the filings were the lowest I had seen for a year and a half in my entire many decades of work. So just a little
Yeah.
tidbit of
Well, and
information.
when you have money, you can get your credit cleaned up. And although it's not necessarily intuitive to people, once you do a bankruptcy and you wipe all that stuff away, you're a better credit risk after a while. And you can find yourself getting credit cards and car loans really soon thereafter. So a lot of people view it as a way to wipe out all that old stuff because they're doing well now and they're not looking in the rear view.
Well, absolutely true.
All
Absolutely
right.
true.
All right, our next question. Again, that website is chicagobankruptcy.com. All right, our next question. The which chapter handles which just debts that may or may not be dischargeable? I have to stop a wage garnishment after it has started, and I'm wondering if bankruptcy can be filed against the restitution amount. It says I was ordered to pay $108,000 of restitution. I was paying $25 per month when I was in community corrections. But when I was released from the Department of Corrections, I got busy and forgot about paying the debt until my checks started getting garnished. Now I need to see what I can do to stop it. Anything?
Yeah, so let's take the $108,000 restitution divided by $25 a month. That's a lot of lifetimes to get that paid off. So that's a pretty nice deal that they
Yeah.
had. All right. People file Chapter 7 for one reason, to obtain a discharge of their legal obligation to pay creditors. The Chapter 7 is completed from start to finish in a little less than 4 months. And the end result is a document signed by the bankruptcy judge called Order of Discharge. So your credit cards, your medical bills, the obligations you created when you receive medical services, when you use the credit card, that legal obligation is gone. But not all debts are discharged in Chapter 7. Child support, alimony, other debts through a divorce judgment, most income tax, and um, government fines. Restitution is a fine. Won't be discharged in Chapter 7. Theoretically, you could file Chapter 13. Chapter 13 can't run more than 5 years. Divide $108,000 by 60 months. That would require an enormous income to repay. So the best that this individual can do for himself, I would assume there is a parole officer to contact and get those payments started up again. If they'll give him 25 a month, that'd be a great deal.
I don't know what the math on that is, but you would have to live a long time to pay.
No, no.
All right. Our next question is someone who was never served their court papers, no due process. What do I do? They say. I was never served court papers and my checks are now being garnished. I just found out that an ex opened a loan in my name about 7 years ago when we were together, and the payments were never made because I didn't even know about it. We have been completely no contact for about 5 years now. My paychecks are being garnished, but I was never served any court papers. I cannot afford to live with 25% of my paychecks being taken when I already live paycheck to paycheck. Oh my.
Well, I used to do divorce work. It's been a long time. I don't want to ever do anymore. But this kind of situation where a spouse forges the other spouse's name, can we say fraud? Fraud. So, um, there's no legitimate basis for this lawsuit. The creditor may not know that. This individual needs to hire an attorney who can deal with litigation and file a motion in court indicating that they were never served with summons, have the case reopened, and let it go to hearing or prove otherwise that it's not their debt to get rid of it. When someone tries to sue someone for money, which is usually going to be a credit card, the person being sued, the defendant, needs to be served personally. Although in some states, depending on the amount of the claim, if it's small enough, it can be done by mail. But generally, it must be served personally. So if this individual was never handed in their hands court papers, then the whole case is void and it can be overturned. Unfortunately, they're going to have to spend some money on attorney's fees to get this done. A place to look for an attorney would be avvo.com. You can find me there also. So,
You know, Joe, I remember walking out of the DuPage County Courthouse when I was a law clerk and I was talking to the guy I was working for, and we talked about this lady who was not paying the credit card bills, and the court ordered her to pay. And, or like maybe the client was a guy and she was ordered to pay. And it's at the end of the day, what I learned that day was that whether the court says this or that, the credit card company doesn't care. They just want their money and they will go forward. And yeah, so we see a lot of those things. There's marriage and divorce, and all those things can really wreak havoc on a lot of things. And we've done articles like just on that subject alone, again, on chicagobankruptcy.com. Just look for information about divorce and bankruptcy. All right, next, walk away from my home. Oh, they want to walk away from their home. Yep, this is one we get to. The person says, I want to stop paying the mortgage and get an apartment. Why not? The wife is an alcoholic. I've got 2 teenage kids. She won't leave the family house, and I can't afford a house and an apartment. I don't mind losing the house or impacting my credit. Can I just stop paying the mortgage and get an apartment?
the short answer is yes. And if this property goes into foreclosure, foreclosure, which it sounds like it might, uh, it's possible that when it's sold to the foreclosure court, the mortgage company doesn't get all their money, and they may try to seek that deficiency from this particular individual. Should that happen, a bankruptcy could be filed. But I would first explore the possibility of selling the property instead of just losing it. And even though there's a horrible relationship here, if it's owned jointly, depending upon any equity in the property, both he and his spouse can possibly walk away with money. So first, can we sell it? And if not, walk away and get on with your life.
Man, when I look at this guy, like he could be my age, the wife who's an alcoholic and 2 teenage kids. I have a cat and I'm single. Sometimes that's really the best. Her
Your
food is
life is
not
your
that.
life is simpler than a lot of us.
Yes, yes, it is. I know. Like I have to worry about my niece and buying, gifts for her. It's just one person. She's 11. So much easier. All right. What about a pending lawsuit with a bankruptcy? Question is, can the Chapter 7 trustee take my pending lawsuit money to pay back creditors? As we proceed with converting my Chapter 13 bankruptcy to a Chapter 7, I have a specific concern regarding a pending personal injury lawsuit. I would like to know if the trustee has the authority to take any settlement or award from this case to pay off those creditors.
So a bankruptcy petition, whether it's a Chapter 13 or Chapter 7, they're basically identical. The Chapter 13 has a few more sections, including a payment plan. And in a petition, among other things, one must list all assets, assets that they have now or could possibly um, get in the future. Cash on hand, bank accounts of any kind, retirement accounts, vehicles, real estate, um, home furnishings of significant value, and pending lawsuits or the possibility, or I'm sorry, the right to file a suit against someone. So if you are in a car accident and it's the other person's fault and you've suffered damages, injuries, medical bills, lost time from work, and you have hired or are going to hire a personal injury attorney in your bankruptcy petition, you will show that you have this possible claim or that you have a pending lawsuit. Most states will allow you to keep a certain amount from any settlement that happens. So whether it's Chapter 13 or Chapter 7, once the case is resolved, all right, let's back up a second. I can talk about Illinois, which is where I practice. In Illinois, you can keep $15,000. If you have a $25,000 settlement, your lawyer gets a portion, doctor bills are the rest, and you get 13, then whether it's a Chapter 13 or a Chapter 7, you'll keep your $13,000. It's exempt. If it's over that amount of money, the Chapter 7 trustee could take it. In a Chapter 13, if you're continuing with your plan, you would have to pay the excess into the plan to the trustee. So, bottom line for this is when you meet with your attorney to talk about the possibility of bankruptcy, everything needs to be disclosed. They'll be asked many, many, many questions. None of them are to be personal, but they are all required in order to properly prepare a petition and provide full disclosure to the office of the U.S. trustee that oversees the system, the bankruptcy judge, and the individual trustee.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, don't try to hide the money. Trying to pull a fast one on the bankruptcy court and a trustee doesn't always go over well. They don't like fraud.
They do not.
They do not. All right, our last question for the day is a phone call someone received from MCM, Midland Credit Management. They got a call from MCM and they left a message to call back regarding personal business matter. I don't have or had any issues about credit delinquency and always had excellent credit reports and scores. How do I respond to this or just ignore their calls?
Phone calls, someone's asking you for money, just totally ignore it, don't answer, or require that they send you written documentation. There is such an enormous amount of scamming and phishing and bogus calls going on. It's unbelievable. Creditors, perhaps you had a credit card from a few years ago, you didn't pay and it's been accumulating and the bank stopped going after you and they sold it to a collection agency and Midland Credit is one of the major ones in the country. So Midland's not going to call you. Midland's going to send you a letter.
Hmm.
So if they say
Right.
they're Midland, there's someone posing it as Midland. Um, I had one myself. Um, it, it was the inspector from the Department of Internal Revenue. Well, it's not the Department of Internal Revenue, it's the Internal Revenue Service, and they don't call you. They
Right.
send you documents.
Right.
So very important, especially for older people who are especially very nice and they want to be friendly. Don't deal with the phone calls. Hang up or request something in writing.
Well, also, if they think that you might be foreign, um, the prior resident here at my home is a Russian guy, and I had people stop by and ring the doorbell, and these two young ladies said they were from, and I'm in Dallas, and they said they were from the office of the Texas comptroller, and they were interested about one of a business entity that I know that he had because mail comes for it every now and then. And I thought it was really weird that the Texas office of the comptroller would send two people by in a Jeep Cherokee with personal license plates. And, they had these like little fold up, I don't know, like they looked sort of official. And me thinking, well, I've got a next door cam. No one's going to be so audacious to walk up on my house and be recorded by camera. Or like I could just take a picture of their license plate. Like this is goofy. But then I looked it up, Joe. And what it is it's a scam. And they tell people that Texas Rangers are going to come and get you, or whoever. And, we can resolve your problem by making a down payment on your back due amount on our card or Venmo right here. Just go get your credit card or debit card. You got 30 minutes before it's too late. And a lot of people don't know. And what else? I know someone who has a retail establishment that had a Bitcoin vending machine and had elderly people coming in there while on the phone with someone, and they are trying to feed money into this Bitcoin thing, and they're just getting scammed. And so, you know what? Just stop and like call your kids, call your neighbor, call someone, call anyone, but ask and find out it is probably bogus.
Totally agree. Totally
Yeah.
agree.
Yeah. What would you do if someone showed up at your house and said, "Hey, Mr. Wrobel, we're from the Illinois Department of Revenue. We want your money."
Have a nice day. We'll see you again.
Yeah, bye bye. Yeah, right. Anyways, it's a good idea for people to have those cameras and next door cameras and ring cameras, because if you have something like that, you might be able to help stop some bad people. Like don't interact yourself, but call authorities and maybe turn over your little footage from your ring camera. Who knows? Anyways, that's our show for today. I hope you all enjoyed finding out answers to bankruptcy frequently asked questions and answers. Joe, do you have anything further for our lovely audience?
Certainly do. Go to my website, www, although I don't know if we have to use those three W's anymore, chicagobankruptcy.com. As Nick said, recently updated. So many people are using just their smartphone to look on the internet. So our website is now easily tailored, easy to follow, and as everyone seems to be doing nowadays when they're looking for products, whatever it is, they're researching what's
Mhm.
good, what's bad. I want to learn about it. Does somebody else like it? So learn about bankruptcy. You can find out a lot on our website. Listen to our previous podcasts, look at the question and answers, read some of the general information, and then just pick up the phone, call us. I'm happy to answer questions. We offer a free consultation. So
All right.
again, chicagobankruptcy.com, and we handle cases in the Chicago, city of Chicago, the surrounding counties, um, Rockford and the surrounding counties. It's easy for us to handle cases that would be an hour and a half drive since everything is now by Zoom.
Right. Make it easy for people.
Absolutely.
All right. Thank you,
Thank
Joe,
you,
so
Nick.
much. Yep. And thank you to everybody who listens to the program. When you do find this on social media or wherever you may find our program, please do a favor to the world and like, share, and share that with someone, because you just never know who's looking for exactly this kind of information. So we thank everyone for your time.
Okay, take care.